Mission Impossible Fallout. Watching Mission Impossible Fallout, I found myself thinking a lot about formula and how it works in a franchise that's been running for, God, like 22 years at this point. Despite having a really good first film in Brian De Palma's original Mission Impossible back in 1996, I think it took a long time for Mission Impossible as a series to really find its feet. Mission Impossible 2, Mission Impossible 3, they're not really great movies. I don't think it was until the fourth one that they finally got the formula, which is to mix the spy and heist genres together. It's Ocean 11 meets Tinker Tailor meets Jason Bourne. It has to have lots of twists and turns, something has to be stolen, picked up, collected, diffused, and there should be preferably a countdown timer that goes almost to zero but not quite. Fallout has all that in droves. We open with Ethan Hunt getting a new impossible mission based around tracking down some explosive nuclear material and possibly free bombs related to it, set up by a couple of fanatics, one of whom we don't know the identity of, and the Apostles, which is kind of a stay-behind network from the events of the previous film and the syndicate spy network that was built up there. That's immediately followed with an audacious opening that I'm going to have to spoil to talk about in any detail, so spoiler alert here if you haven't seen the film. Very briefly, there's a thing I'm going to talk about that happens in the first 10 minutes. They find this nuclear scientist who's a fanatic who's designed these bombs, but it's too late. You know, when he wakes up in hospital, he's watching explosions around the world being reported and millions of people dead, whole areas just irradiated, and the baddies have won. It's an audacious way to open a blockbuster movie like this, and it really plays with that formula that I was talking about. Of course, it turns out that this is another ruse by the IMF. This is a mainstream blockbuster after all, but nevertheless, it's a really fun opening for the movie, and the film plays a lot with levels of reality. You have dream sequences, and you have little bits of predictions for the future, and then changed versions of them when we see them later on. It's a fun way of incorporating slightly more boundary-pushing action sequences into the film when you know that fundamentally, because it's a Tom Cruise movie that's coming out in the middle of summer, everyone's going to live through it and it's going to be fine. And while we're talking about fun sequences, let's be honest, the real plus point of a Mission Impossible film is its set pieces. Like I said, it needs those heist-like environments in order to succeed. Now, this film is actually pretty light on the heists. There's not really a moment when they have to go steal something, but there are a number of really well put together set pieces. There's skydiving, there's helicopter crashes, there's a big fight in a bathroom that you've probably heard a lot about from film Twitter, which thinks it was the best fight that it ever saw, or that this film is a total masterpiece as a result. Neither of which is true, but the film has very good set pieces in it and it is worth watching just for those. I think Christopher McQuarrie, for this exact reason, is one of the more interesting directors working in the action space at the moment, because he negotiates space and relationship between characters through these sequences. The bathroom scene is a good example. It's Henry Cavill, Tom Cruise, and another guy having a big fight, and it plays with their relationships with each other as much as with the actual fighting that they're doing. There's even a nice break in the middle when they're stuck in this bathroom and a couple of drunk French dudes walk in and think they're making out in this stall when really they're like choking this dude or something. It's moments like that that make blockbusters work. They need good set pieces, but they're also charisma led. So you can't just have these big stunts, you have to have a personality in them. And that brings me to Tom Cruise. He's the one thread that's been carried throughout all 22 years of the Mission Impossible film franchise. And it's amazing when you think about the different styles of film that it's been in that time as well. Just compare John Woo to Brian De Palma, and you can see how different this world can be interpreted. And Christopher McQuarrie, of course, has his own interpretation as well. But the whole team's good. You've got Ving Rhames, Simon Pegg, Sean Harris is a great villain, and of course Henry Cavill as a new addition is very good in this movie. But my favourite has to be Vanessa Kirby, who comes in for maybe too small a role as a kind of arms dealer broker type, who actually turns out to be the daughter of Max from the first Mission Impossible film. She feels very much a part of the Mission Impossible universe, and I think she's a great addition. Still, it was weird to have a callback like that to the first Mission Impossible. There's another one too, quite a major one later on in the film, which I don't really want to get into, but it struck me as strange to have that happen, because if you think about it, at 22 years old, that first film has probably not been seen by a large amount of the audience for this film. I barely remember the first Mission Impossible. I was 4 years old when it came out. I think I only remember it because I got the video game version of it on PlayStation 1. It was actually the first video game that I owned. Came out in 1998, a couple of years after the movie, which is a little strange. But I think I remember that game better than I remember the film. So if I, at 26, can barely remember the film that was the start of this franchise, then why are they bringing it up so much without much setup in this film? Kind of a strange thing to do. And I gotta be honest, in my head, I kind of see the first three films as being distinct from the fourth, fifth, and sixth films, which feel very much like a kind of new new take on Mission Impossible. There's lots of moving parts in the film, lots of shifting loyalties. Whose side are they on? What motivations do they have? What are they working for or against? To be honest, there's slightly too many. Eventually, near the end, there's so many reveals in a short space of time that it doesn't really matter what side people are on. It's just like goodies versus baddies. There's not that much distinction between the sides because it's completely unclear at certain points who's working for what or to what end. I get the idea of keeping you guessing, and I think it was used really well in the previous film, but in this case, it just makes the "they've been turned" reveals slightly less interesting. Those moving parts eventually move too far apart, and the finale of the film uses 3 different plot strands very quickly that run concurrent to each other and intercut and have different paces and different types of action in them in a way that doesn't quite hang together. It feels like it runs out of steam there. It doesn't help that there's a number of big dumb exposition scenes where characters talk technobabble or say their feelings to each other, and also that Vanessa Kirby's character, the aforementioned White Widow information broker arms dealer, essentially drops out of the film at this point, which is a bit annoying because she's quite an interesting character and she's been really heavily set up and used quite strongly in the first half of the film. But it's Mission Impossible. The finale has all necessary teeth-clenching, clock countdown moments. It's exactly what you want from this kind of movie, and I think that fans of these films will be pleased with it. It has that Mission Impossible-ness to it. You've got Tom Cruise doing his funny run, you've got Simon Pegg doing silly technobabble over the phone, you've got a clock countdown, you've got twists and turns and different loyalties. It's Mission Impossible. We're all good. And that's fine. I guess I was just expecting the film to be more than that, to be something really astonishing, because film Twitter was basically falling over itself to say that this movie was a complete masterpiece that changed the action genre forever, and that the bathroom sequence was so transcendently good that I would just die in my seat and my soul would go to Valhalla and I'd meet Tom Cruise there. Don't get me wrong, I think the film is good, I think it's one of the better action films of the year, but I don't understand that instinct sometimes on Twitter. It's not just film Twitter, I think politics Twitter and other types of Twitter do it as well, to have this massive counter-reaction. If anyone makes a joke about the film or says it's not going to be that good, you know, because it's the 6th film in a 22-year-long series, not a bad suggestion. And also because it led to some of the most infamous use of CGI in modern history, thanks to Henry Cavill's moustache in this movie. I don't understand the need on Twitter sometimes to have that really strong counter-reaction, those incredibly spicy hot takes where someone says, I didn't like this film much, and you go, not only is it a good film, it's the best film that anyone will ever make or experience. You really don't understand anything about cinema. I get it, you like the movie and some people don't, but there doesn't have to be this eruption of massive overpraise and defense just because someone's rude to the director on Twitter. So that's it from me, another impossible mission completed to good to satisfactory levels. Go and see it in the cinemas if you're a fan of the series. If you haven't seen the films before, I recommend maybe watching a few before you go to this one because it's a little more involved than previous ones have been. If you've seen the movie, I'd love to find out what you thought. Do let me know in the comments down below. I'm always interested to hear your thoughts on the films. And last but not least, I want to say thanks to all the people who really enjoyed my DVD menus video the other day. If you haven't seen it, I've got a little link coming up in the video now for you, and I'll link it in the bio as well. There's been lots of people talking really nicely about it on the video. I posted it almost by accident. I've been sitting on it for a while, waiting for a good time to put it up, and I forgot I'd scheduled it for that time. But it feels really good to have people enjoy that kind of content that's more in-depth and more, I don't want to say arty, but maybe less formulaic than some of the other stuff that I do. It's not just me talking heads, but it was actually quite a complex technical thing, shot anamorphic, which was an interesting change for me. So I'm really glad you appreciate those videos, and I hope to make more of them soon. That's it from me. Have a good one. Bye for now.